On a storm-ravaged night, Harrison Blackwood's headlights catch a figure stumbling into the road. A woman collapses in the mud, trembling. "Please, don't hit me. I'm already hurt." She's running from something darker than the rain. With his young daughter watching, Harrison makes a choice that will unravel secrets, expose a monster, and prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer a stranger shelter. But when her past comes knocking, will kindness be enough to save her? Stay with me until the end of this story and comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey has traveled. The rain came down like bullets that night, hammering against the windshield of Harrison Blackwood's Range Rover with a violence that matched the storm raging inside his chest. He'd stayed late at the office, again buried in contracts and conference calls, anything to avoid going home to that empty house where his wife's absence still hung in every room like morning fog that refused to burn off. "Daddy, you're driving too fast." Lily's small voice from the back seat cut through his thoughts. Harrison glanced in the rearview mirror at his 8-year-old daughter. Her face pale in the dashboard lights, her mother's eyes staring back at him with that same mixture of worry and trust that used to undo him every time. "Sorry, sweetheart, just trying to get us home before this gets worse." Lightning cracked the sky open, and in that split second of brilliant white light, Harrison saw her, a woman stumbling into the middle of the road. His foot slammed on the brake. The Range Rover's tires screamed against wet asphalt, the vehicle fishtailing as Harrison fought the wheel. Lily's scream pierced the air. The world reduced to slow motion, to the horrifying mathematics of velocity and distance, to the certainty that he was about to kill someone. The SUV stopped 3 feet from her body. Harrison's heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack through. His hands were locked on the steering wheel knuckles, white breath coming in ragged gasps. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he could see her collapsed on her knees in the mud, arms raised over her head, in a defensive posture that spoke of too many blows landed, too many promises broken. "Daddy," Lily's voice was small, frightened. "Is she okay?" Harrison forced himself to breathe, to think, to move. He killed the engine but left the headlights on, illuminating the woman kneeling in the road like some kind of broken angel. When he opened the door, the storm hit him with physical force, rain instantly soaking through his suit jacket. "Stay in the car, Lily." "But Daddy." "Stay in the car." He approached slowly, carefully, the way you might approach a wounded animal that doesn't know yet whether you're there to help or to finish the job. The woman was shaking so violently he could see it from 5 feet away. Her dress, what was left of it, clung to her thin frame. Her feet were bare, cut and bleeding. Her hair, dark and matted, hung over her face. "Ma'am," Harrison kept his voice soft, gentle, non-threatening. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" She flinched at his words, curling tighter into herself. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, taking another careful step forward. "I just want to help. Can you look at me?" Slowly, so slowly, it broke something in his chest. She raised her head. The face that emerged from behind that curtain of wet hair was young, maybe late 20s, and covered in bruises at various stages of healing. Her left eye was swollen, nearly shut. Her lip was split, but it was her eyes that stopped Harrison cold. They were empty, hollowed out, the eyes of someone who'd looked into hell and found it looking back. "Please," she whispered, and her voice was raw, destroyed, like she'd screamed herself, voiceless. "Please don't hit me. I'm already hurt." The words landed like a physical blow. Harrison felt his throat tighten, felt the sting of tears he hadn't let himself cry since Sarah's funeral, mixing with the rain on his face. "I won't," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I promise you I won't. My name is Harrison. I have a little girl in that car. We just want to help you. Can you tell me your name?" She stared at him for a long moment, her whole body trembling. When she spoke, it was barely audible over the storm. "Maya." "Maya," Harrison repeated, and something about the way she said it made him think it wasn't the name she was born with. "Okay, Maya, you're hurt, you're cold, you're scared. Let me help you, please." "Daddy." Lily's voice cut through the rain. The car door had opened and his daughter was climbing out, her purple raincoat already soaked through. "Daddy, she's scared. Lily, get back in the—" But Lily was already running toward them, her small feet splashing through puddles, and Harrison's heart seized with a parent's primal terror. The woman could be dangerous, could be on drugs, could be anything, but when Lily reached them, she didn't go to her father. She went straight to Maya, dropping to her knees in the mud beside her. "It's okay," Lily said, in that matter-of-fact way children have of cutting through all the complicated adult nonsense to get to the truth. "My daddy's nice. He won't hurt you. He didn't even kill the spider in my room last week. He put it outside." Something shifted in Maya's face. The blank terror receded just a fraction, replaced by confusion, maybe even the ghost of amusement. A spider. Her voice was still barely there, but there was something human in it now, something that hadn't been there a moment ago. "A really big one," Lily confirmed solemnly. "It was this big." She held her hands apart in the universal child gesture for describing things that were probably not actually that big. "But Daddy said everything deserves to live, even scary things. Are you scared?" Maya's face crumpled. A sob tore out of her throat, raw and painful. "Yes." "Then you can come with us," Lily said simply. "Right, Daddy." Harrison looked at his daughter, at this fierce little soul who somehow knew exactly what to do when he was frozen, and felt his heart crack wider. He looked at Maya, at this broken woman kneeling in the mud in the middle of a storm, and knew that whatever this was, whatever mess he was about to step into, there was no other choice. "Right," he said. "Can you walk, Maya?" She tried to stand, but her legs gave out immediately. Harrison caught her before she could fall, and she flinched so violently at his touch that he almost dropped her. "It's okay," he said quickly. "It's okay. I'm just going to help you to the car. Is that all right?" She nodded just barely and allowed him to support her weight. She weighed nothing, bones and terror held together by will alone. Lily grabbed Maya's other arm, and together this strange trio made their way to the Range Rover. Getting Maya into the back seat was an exercise in patience and gentle coaxing. She kept trying to make herself smaller, to disappear into the corner, her eyes darting to every shadow, like she expected something to emerge and drag her back into the dark. Lily climbed in beside her, still talking in that calm, steady stream of consciousness that only 8-year-olds could maintain. "You can sit by the window if you want. I like the window too, but I'll share. We're going home. Do you like hot chocolate? Daddy makes really good hot chocolate. He puts extra marshmallows in mine, but don't tell him I told you, because he thinks I don't know. He does it." Harrison met Maya's eyes in the rearview mirror as he started the engine. She was staring at Lily like she'd never seen a child before, like she'd forgotten they existed. "We live about 15 minutes from here," Harrison said, pulling back onto the empty highway. "There's a hospital about 20 minutes in the other direction. Do you need a hospital, Maya?" The panic that flashed across her face was instant and absolute. "No, no hospital. Please, no police, no hospital." Red flags went up in Harrison's mind, but he kept his voice calm. "Okay, no hospital, but you're hurt. Will you let me look at your injuries when we get to the house?" She didn't answer, just pressed herself harder against the door. "My mommy was a nurse," Lily offered. "Before she got sick, she taught Daddy how to do Band-Aids really good. He won't hurt you." "Your mommy—" Maya's voice was hoarse. "She died," Lily said, with the blunt honesty of a child who'd learned early that death was real and permanent. 2 years ago, cancer, but Daddy says she's still watching over us. Do you have a mommy?" Harrison wanted to intervene to redirect, but something stopped him. There was something happening between his daughter and this broken stranger, something he couldn't quite name but knew better than to interrupt. "I did," Maya whispered. "A long time ago." "Maybe they're watching over you together," Lee said. "Maybe that's why Daddy found you. Maybe your mommy asked my mommy to tell my daddy to help you." A sound escaped Maya's throat, half laugh, half sob. "Maybe." The rest of the drive passed in silence, broken only by the drum of rain on the roof and Lily's occasional observations about the storm. Harrison's mind was racing, cataloging everything he'd seen, everything he knew, everything he suspected. The bruises, the terror, the refusal of hospitals and police. Someone had hurt this woman systematically and repeatedly, and she was running. The question was, what happened when whoever she was running from came looking? They pulled into the circular driveway of Harrison's house, and he saw Maya's reaction to the sprawling colonial with its warm lights and manicured lawn. She looked terrified, like she was being taken to another kind of prison. "It's okay," Harrison said quickly. "You don't have to come inside if you don't want to. We have a porch. It's covered, it's dry. You can stay out there if that feels safer." Relief washed over her face so powerfully that Harrison felt anger kindle in his chest. What had been done to this woman to make her more comfortable outside in a storm than in a house with people offering help? He parked and grabbed the emergency kit from the trunk along with some blankets. Lily took Maya's hand completely naturally and led her to the wide covered porch that wrapped around the front of the house. "See," Lily said, "you can see everything from here. Nobody can sneak up on you, and there's chairs and lights and everything." Maya sank into one of the wicker chairs, like her strings had been cut, her eyes tracking every movement Harrison made as he set down the blankets and medical kit. "I'm going to bring you some tea," Harrison said, "and some food and dry clothes if you want them. You can stay out here as long as you need to. But Maya, I need you to understand something." He crouched down so he was at her eye level, making sure she could see his face, see the truth in his eyes. "You're safe here. Whatever you're running from, whoever hurt you, they're not welcome in this house, okay?" She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for the lie, for the trap, for the inevitable betrayal. Harrison held her gaze steady and sure until finally she nodded. "Okay." Over the next hour, Harrison and Lily became a two-person emergency response team. Harrison brought out tea soup sandwiches, everything he could think of that might be gentle on a stomach that probably hadn't had regular meals in who knew how long. Lily brought blankets, her own favorite stuffed bear, and an endless stream of stories about school and her friends, and her goldfish named Sparkle, who was, according to Lily, the smartest fish in the entire world. Maya ate slowly, cautiously, like she expected the food to be taken away at any moment. She wrapped herself in the blankets but kept her eyes on the driveway, on the road beyond, always watching for something only she could see. Harrison tended to her feet with the medical kit, cleaning the cuts and wrapping them in gauze. She flinched at every touch but didn't pull away. When he was done, he sat back and studied her face in the porch light. "I'm not going to ask you what happened," he said quietly. "Not tonight, but when you're ready, if you want to tell me, I'll listen. And if you never want to tell me, that's okay too. You don't owe me your story, Maya. You don't owe me anything." Tears slipped down her bruised face. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Harrison thought about that question, about Sarah lying in her hospital bed, holding his hand, and making him promise that he wouldn't let grief turn him bitter, wouldn't let her death close his heart to the world. "Because someone was nice to me once when I needed it," he said. "And because my daughter's watching, and I want her to grow up knowing that when someone's hurting you, help, no questions asked, no payment required." Maya's eyes moved to Lily, who had fallen asleep in the chair next to her, her small hand still resting on Maya's arm. "She's special," Maya whispered. "Yeah," Harrison said, his voice thick. "She is. I don't want to bring trouble to your door." "Too late, you're already here, and I don't scare easy." Maya laughed, bitter and broken. "You don't know what you're saying? So enlighten me." She shook her head, looking away. "Not tonight. I can't. Not tonight." "Okay," Harrison said. "Then just rest. When the sun comes up, we'll figure out the next step." But Maya didn't rest. Even after Harrison carried Lily inside and put her to bed, Even after he dimmed the porch lights and retreated into the house, Maya sat in that wicker chair, wrapped in blankets, staring into the darkness, watching, waiting, because she knew, in the way prey always knows, that you could run and you could hide and you could find kind people with warm houses and brave daughters, but eventually, inevitably, the predator always caught up. Inside, Harrison stood at the window, watching her watch the night, and made a decision. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to his lawyer, his private investigator, and his best friend, who was a cop. Short, simple, to the point. Need help with something. Call me tomorrow. Then he went to his computer and did what he'd been trained to do as a CEO, as a father, as a man who'd learned that the world was full of wolves. He started building a case. He took photos of Maya on the porch, of her injuries, of her bare feet and torn dress. He documented the time, the weather, the location where he'd found her. He didn't know what he was documenting, yet didn't know what he was protecting her from, but he knew that when the storm came, because there was always a storm, he wanted to be ready. As the first gray light of dawn began to paint the horizon, Harrison finally fell asleep in the chair by the window, his phone still in his hand. He woke to the sound of voices, Lily's bright chatter and someone responding soft and hesitant. Harrison's heart jumped into his throat. He rushed to the window and froze. Maya was in the garden. His neglected, overgrown, forgotten garden that Sarah had loved so much and that Harrison hadn't been able to touch since she died. Maya was on her knees in the dirt, her hands buried in the soil, pulling weeds with a gentle precision that spoke of muscle memory, of a skill learned and practiced and loved. Lily sat beside her, narrating the history of every plant, like she remembered it, like she'd been storing up these stories for someone who would finally listen. "Mommy planted those roses," Lily was saying, pointing to the tangled mess of bushes along the fence. "She said they were the prettiest color, like sunset, but they're all sad now. Daddy says he doesn't know how to make them happy again." Maya's hands stilled on a weed. She looked at the roses, really looked at them, and something shifted in her expression. "They're not dead," she said, and her voice was stronger than it had been the night before. "They just need someone to care for them again. See here," she pointed to a section of stem. "New growth. They want to bloom. They're just buried under all the things that are choking them." "Can you make them pretty again?" Lily asked. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said so softly Harrison almost didn't hear it. "I used to have a garden before." Before what Harrison wanted to ask. Before you were hurt. Before you ran. Before your life became whatever nightmare forced you into the road last night. But he didn't ask. Instead, he went to the kitchen and made coffee, made breakfast, and brought it out to the garden on a tray. Like this was normal, like having a battered stranger gardening at dawn was just another Tuesday morning in the Blackwood household. "Morning," he said. Maya jumped, spinning to face him, her whole body tensing for flight. But when she saw it was just him with coffee and toast, some of the panic receded. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have. I saw the garden and I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'll stop." "Don't stop," Harrison said. "Please, this garden has needed someone who knows what they're doing for 2 years now. I built a business from the ground up, but I can't keep a tomato plant alive to save my life." A ghost of a smile crossed Maya's face. "These aren't tomatoes." "See?" Harrison set the tray down on the garden bench. "Already teaching me things." They ate breakfast in the garden as the sun climbed higher, as the world woke up around them. Lily chattered about school and her friend Emma, who could do a backflip, and the class hamster who escaped last week and was found in the principal's desk. Maya listened, really listened, like every word was precious. Harrison watched them and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight since Sarah died. The house had been so quiet, so empty, so full of careful grief and walking on eggshells. But here was Lily alive again, animated again, talking like she used to before she learned that talking too much might make Daddy cry. "Maya," Harrison said when Lily paused for breath, "I want to offer you something, and I need you to know there's no pressure, no obligation. You can say no, and I'll drive you anywhere you want to go, give you money, help you however I can. But if you need a place to stay for a while, you could work here." Maya's eyes widened. Work? The garden needs help. The house needs help, if I'm honest. I'm not home enough, and Lily's too young to manage things, and our housekeeper quit last month because I kept forgetting to leave her checks. I need someone who can tend the garden, help with the house, maybe cook sometimes. I'd pay you, of course, fair wages. And you'd have your own space, the guest house out back. It's small, but it's private. You could lock the door. You could leave whenever you wanted. He was rambling now, trying to make it sound reasonable, trying to make it sound like this was a business transaction and not what it actually was, a desperate attempt to keep this broken woman from disappearing back into whatever darkness had consumed her. Maya was shaking her head. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, where I've been." "You're right, I don't. But I know you pulled weeds from my wife's roses like they mattered. I know you listened to my daughter like her words were important. I know you said please when you thought I was going to hurt you, like even in your terror you remembered your manners. That tells me everything I need to know." "You're insane," Maya whispered, but there was something in her voice, something that sounded almost like hope. "Possibly," Harrison agreed, "but I'm also serious. Think about it. No pressure, but the offer stands." Lily, who had been watching this exchange with the intensity of a child who understood more than adults, gave her credit for suddenly spoke up. "We need a contract." Both adults turned to look at her. "A contract," Lily repeated. "That's what Daddy does for business. You write down what everyone promises, and then everyone signs it, and then it's official." Harrison couldn't help but smile. "She's got a point." "Okay," Lily said, pulling a notebook and crayon from her pocket. She wrote with the careful concentration of a second grader, her tongue sticking out slightly as she formed each letter. When she was done, she held up her creation proudly. "Contract Maya will fix the garden, make the house nice, eat all the cookies she wants. Daddy will pay Maya money, be nice, smile more. Lily will help in the garden, not ask too many questions, share Sparkle the fish." "Everyone signs," Lily declared, handing the notebook to Maya. Maya stared at the childish contract, at the crayon drawings of flowers and smiley faces decorating the margins. Her hands were shaking. "Lily," she said, her voice breaking, "I'm not sure I can make your daddy smile more." "You're already doing it," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Look." Maya glanced at Harrison, and he realized with a start that he was smiling, really smiling for the first time in months. With trembling hands, Maya took the crayon and signed her name at the bottom of the contract. Then Harrison signed, then Lily signed with a flourish and 3 exclamation points. "It's official," Lily declared. "Welcome to the family, Maya." And just like that, in a garden full of wounded roses and new beginnings, a family that had been broken began very carefully to heal. The first week passed like a dream Maya was afraid to wake from. She moved into the guest house on a Tuesday afternoon carrying nothing because she had nothing to carry. Harrison had offered to take her shopping, but the thought of stores and people and open spaces made her chest tight. So instead, he'd ordered everything online. Clothes in soft fabrics that didn't bind or scratch. Toiletries that smelled like lavender instead of the chemical, sterile scent that made her stomach turn. Sheets with a thread count she didn't know existed, and pillows that felt like clouds. The guest house itself was small, maybe 400 square feet, but it had a lock on the door, a lock that only she had the key to. That first night, Maya locked and unlocked that door 17 times, testing it, making sure it held, making sure she wasn't trapped. Then she pushed the dresser in front of it anyway and slept on the floor with her back against the wall where she could see both the door and the window. She woke before dawn, her heart racing from dreams she couldn't quite remember, and found Lily sitting on the porch steps of the main house, waiting. "You're up early," Maya said, her voice still rough with sleep. "I wanted to catch the sunrise with you," Lily said simply. Mommy used to say that sunrises were like promises. Every day gets a chance to start over. They watched the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, and Maya thought about promises, about chances, about all the sunrises she'd missed while living in rooms with curtains that were never allowed to open. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said. Maya tensed. "Your contract said not too many questions." "This is important, though." Lily turned to face her, her expression serious beyond her years. "Are you going to disappear?" The question hit Maya in the chest. "What? People disappear sometimes," Lily said, matter-of-factly. "Mommy disappeared into the hospital and didn't come back. My friend Zoe's dad disappeared one day, and her mom said he went to find himself, but Zoe says he just didn't want to be a dad anymore. So I'm asking, are you going to disappear?" Maya looked at this child, this brave, fierce soul who'd already lost so much, and was asking for the one thing Maya couldn't promise: honesty. "I don't want to," Maya said carefully, "but sometimes people like me, people who are running from bad things, sometimes the bad things catch up. And if that happens, I might have to go away to keep you and your dad safe." Lily considered this, her small face thoughtful. "But you'll try to stay?" "I'll try." "Okay." Lily stood up, brushing off her pajama pants. "Then I'll try to help you stay. That's what families do." She went inside before Maya could respond, before Maya could tell her that she wasn't family, couldn't be family, shouldn't be family, because family meant attachment, and attachment meant pain, when everything inevitably fell apart. But the word stayed with her all day as she worked in the garden, as she coaxed life back into soil that had forgotten what it meant to be tended. Family. By the second week, they'd fallen into a routine. Maya woke at dawn and worked in the garden until breakfast. Lily would join her before school, chattering about homework and friends and the injustice of having to eat vegetables. Harrison would appear with coffee, always announcing himself before he got too close, always giving Maya space to breathe. Then Lily would leave for school and Harrison for work, and Maya would have the house to herself. At first, the silence terrified her. She kept waiting for footsteps, for doors slamming, for the sound of his voice, calling her name in that tone that meant she'd done something wrong again, something that would need to be corrected. But the only sounds were birds and wind chimes and the old house settling into itself. She cleaned carefully, methodically, learning the house's rhythms. Harrison's office was off limits unless he specifically asked her to clean it. Lily's room was an explosion of purple and glitter and stuffed animals that had names and backstories. The master bedroom was where Sarah still lived, in photographs and jewelry boxes, and a closet full of clothes that Harrison hadn't been able to give away yet. Maya didn't touch Sarah's things. That felt sacred somehow, like stepping into a grief that wasn't hers to disturb. Instead, she focused on the kitchen, learning to cook again, remembering recipes her mother had taught her a lifetime ago. She made simple things at first: pasta with fresh tomatoes from the garden, roasted chicken with herbs, soup that simmered all day and made the house smell like home. Harrison noticed. "You didn't have to do this," he said one evening, coming home to find dinner waiting on the table. "The contract says make the house nice," Maya said, not meeting his eyes. "Food is part of that." The contract was written in crayon by an 8-year-old. It's still legally binding. Harrison laughed, and the sound did something strange to Maya's chest, made it feel less tight, less like she was drowning. "In that case," he said, sitting down at the table, "I'm holding you to the unlimited cookies clause." They ate together that night, the three of them, and it felt dangerously close to normal. Lily talked about her day with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been saving up stories. Harrison listened with the attention of a father who knew these moments were precious, and Maya sat between them, feeling like an imposter, like someone playing house in a life that belonged to someone else. But when Lily reached over and took her hand, during grace, Maya didn't pull away. The third week, Lily asked if Maya would come to parent-teacher night. "Your dad should go," Maya said carefully. "That's a dad thing." But you're here too, Lily said, and Miss Peterson wants to meet everyone who's important. Everyone who's important. The words wrapped around Maya's heart and squeezed. I don't know if that's a good idea, Lily. Please. Lily's eyes were huge, pleading. Emma's bringing her mom and her mom's boyfriend. Jack's bringing his dad and his stepmom. I want to bring my whole family too. There was that word again, family. Harrison found Maya in the garden later that afternoon, her hands buried in dirt. Her mind somewhere else entirely. You don't have to go if you don't want to, he said, kneeling beside her. I can explain to Lily that you're not comfortable yet. She called me family. Yeah, Harrison pulled a weed, examining its roots. She tends to do that, adopt people, her goldfish, her stuffed animals, the stray cat that comes around. She's got a big heart. I'm not a goldfish or a stuffed animal. No, Harrison agreed. You're someone who's been hurt and who's trying to heal. Someone who makes my daughter smile and who brought my wife's garden back to life. Someone who I'm grateful showed up on that road, even though I'm terrified every day that whatever you're running from is going to find you and I won't be able to stop it. Maya's hands stilled in the dirt. You shouldn't get attached. Too late. Harrison stood brushing off his knees. Way too late. Parent-teacher night is Thursday at 7. If you want to come, we'd love to have you. If you don't, we understand. No pressure, Maya. Never pressure. He walked away before she could respond, before she could tell him that attachment was dangerous, that caring about her was a mistake, that everyone who'd ever loved her had paid for it in blood and tears and broken things that couldn't be fixed. But Thursday night at 6:30, Maya found herself standing in front of the mirror in the guest house, wearing one of the new dresses Harrison had bought her, simple and blue and nothing like the clothes she used to wear before. Before she was Maya. Before she learned that sometimes you had to die to survive. Lily's squeal of delight when Maya walked into the main house almost made her turn around and run. You're coming. You're really coming, Daddy. Look, she's wearing the blue dress. It matches her eyes. You look beautiful, Harrison said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made Maya's cheeks flush. It's just a school thing. It's a family thing, Lily corrected, grabbing Maya's hand. Come on, we're going to be late. Washington Elementary was exactly what Maya expected. Colorful hallways covered in student artwork classrooms with alphabet borders and reading corners, the organized chaos of parents and teachers and children all trying to occupy the same space. Maya's chest tightened as they walked through the doors. So many people, so many eyes. What if someone recognized her? What if someone had seen the missing person reports the newspaper ads? The face that wasn't Maya's face, but belonged to a woman named Rebecca who was supposed to be dead. You okay? Harrison's hand was suddenly on her back, warm and steady. We can leave. No, Maya forced herself to breathe. No, I promised Lily. Miss Peterson turned out to be young and enthusiastic, with the kind of energy that made Maya tired just watching her. She shook their hands, gushed about what a wonderful student Lily was, showed them the artwork covering the walls. And you must be Mom, Miss Peterson said to Maya, and the world tilted sideways. No, I'm not. I'm... Maya stammered, panic rising in her throat. She's family, Lily said firmly. She lives with us and takes care of us, and that makes her important, right? Miss Peterson, you said to bring the important people. Absolutely right, Miss Peterson said warmly, apparently not noticing Maya's distress. Family comes in all shapes and sizes. What matters is love. They moved through the evening in a blur. Maya saw Lily's math tests, her reading journal, her science project about butterflies. She met Emma and her mom's boyfriend, who seemed nice enough. She met Jack and his complicated family situation, and his stepmom, who looked as uncomfortable as Maya felt. And slowly, so slowly, she almost didn't notice the panic receded, because no one was looking at her like she was a missing person or a dead woman or a victim. They were looking at her like she was just another parent at parent-teacher night, just another person who cared about a child and wanted her to succeed. It was the most normal Maya had felt in 3 years. On the way home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting against Maya's arm. "Thank you," Harrison said quietly, his eyes on the road. "For coming tonight. I know it wasn't easy. She's a good kid, smart. You're doing a good job with her." "We're doing a good job with her," Harrison corrected. "These past few weeks, Maya, she's been happier than I've seen her since Sarah died. She laughs more, she talks more. She's not so afraid all the time that I'm going to break." Maya looked down at Lily's sleeping face. "She's afraid of that. Kids pick up on everything. She knew I was drowning. Hell, I was drowning. Work and grief and trying to be both parents when I could barely manage being one. But then you showed up and suddenly there's life in the house again. There's dinner on the table and flowers in the vases and someone who listens to her stories like they matter. They do matter. I know that. You know that. But I wasn't always present enough to show it." Harrison pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. "What I'm trying to say, probably badly, is that you're not just helping with the house and the garden. You're helping us heal, and I want you to know that we see you. That whatever happened before, whoever hurt you, they were wrong. You're not broken, Maya. You're not damaged. You're just someone who survived something terrible, and that makes you one of the strongest people I've ever met." Maya's throat was too tight to speak. She carefully extracted her arm from under Lily's head and got out of the car before the tears could fall. Harrison carried Lily inside, and Maya retreated to the guest house, to the space that was hers alone, to the door with the lock that only she controlled. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall and cried for the first time since that night on the road. Cried for the woman she used to be, for the life she'd lost, for the family she was building with borrowed time and borrowed names, because it couldn't last. She knew it couldn't last. The fourth week, Maya woke to the sound of rain and the feeling that something was wrong. She couldn't explain it. Nothing had changed. Harrison had gone to work. Lily had gone to school. The house was quiet and safe and exactly as it should be. But Maya's skin was crawling with the sensation of being watched, of being hunted. She'd felt this before. Right before he found her the last time she tried to run. Right before everything fell apart. Maya forced herself to go through the motions. Garden, clean, cook, normal. Everything was normal. But when she checked the mail, her hands were shaking. And there, between the electric bill and a furniture catalog, was a newspaper, not their local paper, a paper from 3 states away, folded open to page 7. Beloved psychiatrist seeks missing wife. The photo was old from before, but it was unmistakably her. Rebecca Brennan, age 28, missing since her presumed drowning death 3 years ago. Anyone with information should contact Dr. Richard Brennan immediately. Substantial reward offered. The newspaper slipped from Maya's fingers and scattered across the porch. He knew. Somehow he knew she was alive. And he was looking. Maya's first instinct was to run. Pack nothing, take nothing, just disappear into the wind like she'd done before. But then she thought of Lily, of the contract signed in crayon, of the promise she'd made on the porch steps. "I'll try to stay." And she thought of Harrison, of his steady presence and his careful kindness, and the way he looked at her sometimes like she was someone worth knowing. She couldn't drag them into this, wouldn't, but she couldn't run either, not yet, not without saying goodbye. Maya picked up the newspaper with trembling hands and took it to her room. She needed to think, needed to plan, needed to figure out how Richard had found her, how close he was, how much time she had left. That night, Harrison noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Maya, you've been stirring that sauce for 10 minutes. It's going to burn." She jerked, looking down at the pot like she'd forgotten it existed. "Sorry, I was just sorry." Harrison turned off the burner and gently took the spoon from her hand. "Talk to me." "I can't." "Yes, you can. Whatever it is, we can handle it." "You can't handle this." Maya's voice broke. You can't handle him. The word hung in the air between them. Him, the person she was running from, the shadow that had been chasing her for 3 years. Your husband, Harrison said quietly. It wasn't a question. Maya's head snapped up. How did you? I'm not stupid, Maya. Bruises like yours, the way you flinch from sudden movements, your terror of hospitals and police. Someone hurt you systematically and repeatedly. And the way you wouldn't give me your real name that first night. The way you pay for everything in cash. The way you don't have any form of ID. You're hiding. And people don't hide like that unless they're running from someone with power. He's a doctor, Maya whispered. A psychiatrist. Respected, beloved. Everyone thinks he's a saint. And I'm the crazy wife who tried to kill herself by drowning and disappeared. Except I didn't try to kill myself. I faked my death so I could escape. Jesus, Harrison's face had gone pale. Maya. He found me. I don't know how, but he found me. There was a newspaper in the mail today with my picture, my real name. He's looking for me, and when he finds me, because he always finds me, he'll take me back. Or worse. No. Harrison's voice was hard, flat. The voice of a man who'd built an empire by refusing to accept defeat. No, he won't. Because this time you're not alone. This time you have me, and I have resources, Maya. Money and lawyers and connections that he can't match. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then help me understand. Harrison pulled out a chair, sat down at the kitchen table. Tell me everything. Not because I don't believe you, but because I need to know what we're up against if we're going to fight this. Maya stared at him. Harrison, this isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. You're living in my house. You're taking care of my daughter. You made my family whole again. That makes it my fight. His eyes were fierce, determined. Tell me, Maya. Tell me what he did. And so, for the first time since she'd become Maya, she told someone the truth. She told him about Rebecca Brennan, who'd married Dr. Richard Brennan at 24, believing she'd found love and partnership and safety. She told him about the first year when Richard had been charming and attentive and perfect, and then about the second year when the control started. Small things at first, suggesting what she should wear, asking where she'd been, questioning why she needed friends when she had him. She told him about year 3 when suggestion became command and questions became interrogation, and the house became a prison with invisible bars. He never hit me, Maya said, and her voice was hollow empty, not where anyone could see. But he was a psychiatrist, Harrison. He knew exactly how to break someone without leaving marks. Sleep deprivation, isolation, gaslighting until I couldn't trust my own memory, telling me I was sick, that I needed help, that I was lucky he loved me enough to stay. Harrison's hands were clenched into fists on the table, his jaw tight. I tried to leave once, Maya continued. Made it to a hotel 2 towns over. He found me in 6 hours, brought me home, locked me in the bedroom for a week, told everyone I was having a mental health crisis. And everyone believed him because he was Dr. Richard Brennan, and I was just his unstable wife. How did you get away? I planned for a year, saved cash from the grocery money, $1 or $2 at a time, researched how to fake a drowning, found a beach with strong currents and no lifeguards, left my clothes and my phone and my wedding ring on the sand. Then I ran. For 3 years. For 3 years. Different cities, different names, always moving, always looking over my shoulder. I worked cash jobs, slept in shelters, stayed invisible. Maya looked at Harrison, and her eyes were wet. Until I stumbled into your headlights and your daughter decided I was worth saving. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady, calm, the voice of a man making a decision that would change everything. We're going to destroy him. Maya laughed, bitter and broken. You can't. He's too powerful, too respected. So am I. Harrison pulled out his phone. I've been making calls, Maya, since that first night. I had a feeling you were running from something bad, and I wanted to be prepared. I have a lawyer who specializes in abuse cases, a private investigator who's former FBI, friends in media who owe me favors. We can build a case against him. With what evidence? It's been 3 years. There's no proof of anything he did. There's you, there's your testimony, and I'm willing to bet you're not the only one he's hurt. Harrison leaned forward. Men like that, they have patterns. Other victims. Other women who were too afraid to speak up because who would believe them over the respected Dr. Brennan? Hope flickered in Maya's chest, dangerous and fragile. You really think we can beat him? I think we can try, but Maya, I need you to promise me something. What? Don't run, not yet. Give me a chance to fight for you. Harrison reached across the table and took her hand, the first time he'd initiated touch since that night on the road. Please, trust me, trust us. Maya looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd shown her nothing but kindness, at the house where his daughter slept peacefully upstairs, at the life she'd built from ashes and borrowed time. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. I'll fight. Good. Harrison squeezed her hand once, then released it. Now go pack a bag, not to run, just in case. And tomorrow we start building the case that's going to bury Richard Brennan. That night, Maya didn't sleep. She packed a bag like Harrison said, then sat by the window watching the road, waiting for headlights that would mean he'd come, that the respite was over, that the battle was beginning, whether they were ready or not. But the only headlights that came were from neighbors heading home from teenagers, driving too fast from a world that kept spinning, regardless of the wars being fought behind closed doors. When dawn broke, Lily knocked on the guest house door. Maya, you awake? Maya opened the door to find Lily standing there in her pajamas, holding something wrapped in a dish towel. I made you breakfast, Lily said. Well, Daddy helped, but I did most of it. It's burnt, but that means it's extra crispy. Maya looked at this child, this fierce, bright soul, who'd decided that Maya was family and had never wavered from that conviction, and felt something shift inside her chest. She wasn't Rebecca anymore, the broken woman who'd drowned herself to survive. She wasn't just Maya, the ghost drifting through other people's lives. She was someone worth fighting for, someone worth saving, and maybe, just maybe, she was strong enough to fight back. Thank you, Lily, Maya said, taking the towel-wrapped offering. Extra crispy is my favorite. They ate breakfast together on the porch steps as the sun painted promises across the sky, and Maya let herself believe just for a moment that some promises were meant to be kept. Harrison's lawyer arrived at 9 that morning, a woman named Catherine Chen who wore power suits and had eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, Catherine said, settling into the living room with a legal pad and a recording device. And I mean everything, Maya, even the things you think don't matter, especially the things you're ashamed of. Maya's hand shook as she recounted it all again, this time with Harrison sitting beside her and Catherine documenting every word. The isolation, the manipulation, the way Richard had convinced her she was mentally ill, that her memory couldn't be trusted, that she needed him to interpret reality for her. He kept journals, Maya said, remembering, about me, about my behaviors, my moods, everything I said or did. He said it was to help track my illness, but really, it was to have proof that I was unstable if I ever tried to leave. Catherine's pen moved rapidly across the pad. Do you know where these journals are? His office. At home, he kept them locked in a filing cabinet. We'll need them. Catherine looked up. Maya, what I'm about to ask is going to be difficult, but it's necessary. Are you willing to go public with this? To testify not just in court, but potentially in front of cameras, media, the whole world. The room tilted. I thought this would be private, a legal case. It will be, but men like Richard Brennan don't go down quietly. He'll use his reputation as a weapon. He'll call you crazy, claim you're having delusions, drag up every mistake you've ever made. The only way to fight that is to control the narrative first, to tell your story before he can twist it. Maya felt Harrison's hand find hers steady and warm. You don't have to decide now, Catherine said, but think about it. In the meantime, I'm going to start digging into Richard's background. Patient complaints, malpractice suits, anything that suggests a pattern of abuse. and Harrison's investigator is already tracking his movements, his finances, his associates. He's looking for me, Maya said quietly. That newspaper wasn't an accident. He knows I'm alive and he's hunting. Then we hunt him first. Catherine stood, gathering her things. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. In the meantime, vary your routine. Stay alert. Don't go anywhere alone. After Catherine left, Maya retreated to the garden, her sanctuary, the place where her hands could work and her mind could quiet. But today, the quiet wouldn't come. Every sound made her jump. Every car that passed on the street made her heart race. Harrison found her an hour later standing frozen by the roses, staring at nothing. He used to love roses, Maya said. Richard had them delivered to the house every week, white roses. He said they represented purity, innocence. I used to think it was romantic. She laughed hollow. I didn't realize he was telling me what he expected me to be. Pure, innocent, blank, a white canvas he could paint whatever he wanted on. Maya, I burned them all the night I left. Every single white rose in that house. Piled them in the fireplace and watched them turn to ash. She turned to face Harrison and her eyes were fierce. Do you know what that felt like? To destroy something beautiful that had been used to hurt me. It felt like freedom. Good, Harrison said. Hold on to that feeling. You're going to need it. The first breakthrough came 3 days later. Catherine called at 7 in the morning, her voice crackling with energy. I found someone, a former patient of Richard's. Her name is Jennifer Cole, and she's willing to talk. They met Jennifer at a coffee shop 2 towns over, away from prying eyes. She was younger than Maya, maybe 25, with haunted eyes that Maya recognized instantly. I was his patient for 2 years. Jennifer set her coffee untouched in front of her. I went to him for anxiety after my mom died. He was so understanding at first, so helpful. Then he started suggesting I needed more intensive treatment, private sessions at his home office, sessions that went longer and longer. Maya's stomach turned. She knew where this was going. He said I had abandonment issues from losing my mom, that I was seeking a father figure, that what I was feeling for him was transference, natural, but something we needed to work through. Jennifer's voice broke. He convinced me that sleeping with him was part of my therapy, that it would help me process my grief and learn to trust men again. Jesus, Harrison breathed. When I finally realized what he was doing when I tried to report him, he had years of documentation showing I was mentally unstable, prone to delusions, suffering from erotic transference syndrome. He destroyed my credibility before I ever opened my mouth. Jennifer looked at Maya. When I saw the missing person ad for his wife, I knew she was real, that she'd gotten away, and I hoped she'd stay gone. I tried, Maya said softly, but he found me. Then we make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Jennifer pulled out a folder. I kept everything, emails, text messages, receipts from the hotels where he took me. I was too scared to use them before, but if you're willing to fight, I'll stand with you. Catherine practically vibrated with excitement. This is it. This establishes pattern of behavior, abuse of power. Maya, with your testimony and Jennifer's evidence, we can build a case that even Richard's reputation can't protect him from. There are others, Jennifer said quietly. I've been part of an online support group for survivors of therapist abuse. There are at least 3 other women who saw Richard. They were too afraid to come forward, but if they see we're fighting, they might join us. Maya felt something shift inside her chest. She'd spent 3 years thinking she was alone, that she was the only one who'd seen through Richard's mask. But she wasn't alone. There were others, a whole chorus of voices he'd tried to silence. Find them, Maya said. Find them all. Let's show the world who Dr. Richard Brennan really is. The next 2 weeks were a blur of depositions and interviews and evidence gathering. Catherine worked 18-hour days building a case that would survive any attack Richard's lawyers could mount. Harrison's investigator, a granite-faced former FBI agent, named Marcus Webb, dug into Richard's finances and found irregularities. Cash withdrawals that didn't match his lifestyle. Payments to women who signed non-disclosure agreements. A pattern of buying silence. Maya gave her testimony in Catherine's office, speaking into a camera, documenting every moment of her marriage, every instance of abuse, every method Richard had used to break her down. It was excruciating, reliving it all, but Harrison sat just off camera, and whenever Maya's voice faltered, she'd look at him and find the strength to continue. Lily noticed the change in the house, the tension that had everyone moving on eggshells. "Is Maya in trouble?" she asked Harrison one night at dinner. "Not trouble, sweetheart, but she's dealing with some difficult things from before she came to live with us." Lily looked at Maya, her expression serious. "Is it the bad thing you were running from?" Maya's throat tightened. "Yes." "Are you going to leave?" "No." Maya reached across the table and took Lily's hand. "I promised I'd try to stay. Remember, I'm keeping that promise. We're just making sure the bad thing can't follow me anymore." "Good," Lily said firmly, "because I don't want you to go. You're my family now, and families stick together." That night, after Lily was in bed, Maya stood in the kitchen washing dishes while Harrison dried. It was domestic, comfortable, the kind of routine married couples fell into, and maybe that's why Maya finally said what she'd been thinking for weeks. "You know, I'm falling in love with you, right?" Harrison's hand stilled on the dish he was drying. "Maya, I know I shouldn't. I know it's a terrible idea and terrible timing, and I'm a mess who's about to drag you through a legal nightmare. But I need you to know before this all goes to hell that you saved me. Not just that night on the road. Every day since. You and Lily, you made me remember what it felt like to be human." Harrison set down the dish and turned to face her. "I'm falling in love with you too." The words hung between them, fragile and terrifying and true. "I feel like I'm betraying Sarah," Harrison continued, his voice rough. "Like moving forward means leaving her behind. But then I remember what she said at the end, that she didn't want grief to turn me into a ghost, that she wanted Lily to grow up in a house full of love, even if she couldn't be there to give it. She sounds like she was incredible. She was, and she would have liked you, would have appreciated the way you brought her garden back to life, the way you make Lily laugh." Harrison reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Maya's ear, the gesture achingly tender. "When this is over, when Richard is behind bars and you're free, I want to see where this goes, if you want that too." "I do." Maya leaned into his touch. "I really do." They didn't kiss. The moment felt too fragile for that, too weighted with everything they were fighting for, but they stood there in the kitchen, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, and Maya felt hope bloom in her chest, like the roses she'd tended back to life. The hope lasted exactly 4 more days. Maya was in the garden on a Wednesday afternoon when she felt it again, that crawling sensation of being watched. She straightened slowly, scanning the street, the neighboring houses, the tree line at the back of the property. Nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. She went inside and locked the doors, checked every window closed, every curtain. Then she called Harrison. "He's here," she said without preamble. "I can feel it. He's here." "I'm coming home. Lock yourself in the guest house. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Maya did as instructed, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She pushed furniture against the door, grabbed the phone Harrison had given her for emergencies, and waited. 20 minutes later, she heard footsteps on the porch. "Maya, it's me," Harrison's voice. She exhaled shakily and moved the furniture, opened the door. He wasn't alone. Marcus Webb stood beside him, his face grim. "We've got a problem," Marcus said. "Richard Brennan arrived in town this morning. He's checked into the Hilton downtown, and he's filed a missing person report with the local police, claiming his mentally ill wife has been spotted in the area and may be in danger." Maya's legs went weak. Harrison caught her, guided her to a chair. "He's using the system against me," she whispered. "Just like before, making himself the concerned husband, making me the unstable wife who needs to be found and returned to his care. We're ahead of him this time. Catherine's voice came from Marcus's phone on some speaker. I've already contacted the police chief, provided him with our evidence, explained that Rebecca Brennan is alive, safe and cooperating with an ongoing investigation into Dr. Brennan's abuse of multiple women. They won't help him find you. But they can't stop him from looking, Maya said. He knows I'm here. He probably hired private investigators, tracked Harrison's credit cards, put together that the man who almost hit a woman on the road that night is the same man who suddenly has a live-in housekeeper who matches my description. Then we move up the timeline, Catherine said. We go public tomorrow. Press conference, media blitz, everything. We control the narrative before he can. Tomorrow? Maya's voice rose. I'm not ready. You'll never be ready, Catherine said, not unkindly. But you're strong enough, and you won't be alone. Jennifer and 2 of the other women have agreed to stand with you. We present a united front. Multiple victims, documented evidence, a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. That's a story the media can't ignore. Maya looked at Harrison, at Marcus, at the phone where Catherine's voice emanated calm confidence. What if I mess it up? What if I freeze or say the wrong thing or... Then we deal with it, Harrison said firmly. Maya, you've survived 3 years on the run. You've rebuilt yourself from nothing. You can handle a press conference. Can I, though he's going to be there? You know he will. He'll sit in that room and stare at me, and I'll see him and You'll remember that you're not alone anymore. Harrison knelt in front of her chair, taking both her hands in his. You'll remember that Lily is waiting at home for you, that I'm standing beside you, that 4 other women are trusting you to speak for them, and you'll remember that white roses burning in a fireplace felt like freedom. Maya closed her eyes, breathing through the panic. When she opened them, something had hardened in her expression. Okay, she said. Okay, let's do it. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through everything she wanted to say, everything she needed people to understand. That abuse didn't always look like bruises and broken bones. That psychological torture could be just as devastating as physical violence. That powerful men could smile and charm and hurt women in ways that left no visible scars. At 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went to the main house. She wasn't surprised to find Harrison in the kitchen making coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Too many thoughts. They sat at the kitchen table in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the darkness outside gradually lighten to gray. What if he wins? Maya asked. What if people believe him instead of us? Then we fight harder. We appeal. We dig deeper. We find more evidence. We don't give up. You say that like it's simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Harrison reached across the table. But Maya, you've already done the hardest thing. You already survived him. Everything else is just details. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Catherine's law office. Maya spent the morning getting ready, putting on armor in the form of a gray suit that Catherine had picked out, practicing her statement in the mirror, trying to convince herself she could do this. Lily hugged her before she left. You're brave, Maya. Braver than anyone I know. I'm terrified. Brave people are always scared. That's what makes them brave. They do it anyway. The wisdom of 8-year-olds, Maya thought, blinking back tears. The drive to Catherine's office felt like driving to an execution. Maya's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Harrison kept one hand on her knee, grounding her, reminding her she wasn't alone. When they arrived, the parking lot was already full of news vans, cameras, reporters. The circus had begun. Catherine met them at a side entrance. The other women are already here, ready. No, Maya thought, but she said yes. The conference room was packed. Cameras in the back, reporters in chairs, the low hum of anticipation. And there in the 3rd row, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of wounded concern, sat Dr. Richard Brennan. Maya's breath stopped. 3 years. 3 years since she'd seen his face, and it was exactly as she remembered. Handsome, distinguished, the kind of face that inspired trust, and behind his eyes that familiar cold calculation that told her he was already planning how to destroy her. "Maya," Catherine's voice cut through the panic. "Look at me, not him, me." Maya tore her gaze away from Richard and focused on Catherine. "He doesn't own you anymore," Catherine said quietly. "He doesn't get to make you small. You're about to tell the truth, and the truth is powerful. Remember that." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Catherine stepped to the podium, and the room quieted. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Catherine Chen, and I represent Rebecca Brennan, formerly known as the missing wife of Dr. Richard Brennan. I'm here to announce that Mrs. Brennan is alive and well, and that she's bringing formal charges against her husband for psychological abuse, false imprisonment, and manipulation spanning their entire marriage." The room exploded with noise. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, and through it all, Richard sat perfectly still, his expression never changing. Catherine waited for quiet, then continued. "Mrs. Brennan will be making a statement, as will 3 other women who were patients of Dr. Brennan and who suffered similar abuse. I'll ask that you hold all questions until after the statements are complete." Maya stood on shaking legs and walked to the podium. The lights were blinding, the cameras were everywhere, and Richard was staring at her with that look she knew so well, the one that said she was making a mistake, that she would regret this, that he would make her pay. But then she felt Harrison's presence behind her just off to the side, and she saw Jennifer in the front row giving her an encouraging nod, and she thought of Lily at home waiting to hear that Maya had been brave. "My name is Rebecca Brennan," Maya said, and her voice was stronger than she expected. "But for the last 3 years, I've been calling myself Maya because I had to die to survive my marriage." She told them everything, every manipulation, every gaslighting technique, every method Richard had used to isolate and control her. She told them about the journals, the surveillance, the way he'd convinced her she was losing her mind. She told them about planning her escape for a year, about the staged drowning, about 3 years of running and hiding and being too afraid to use her own name. "Dr. Brennan is a respected psychiatrist," Maya said, looking directly at Richard for the first time, "and he used that respectability as a weapon. He knew exactly how to hurt someone without leaving evidence. He knew how to make me doubt my own reality. He knew that if I ever tried to leave, no one would believe me because I was the unstable wife, and he was the concerned husband trying to help." Richard's expression finally changed. His jaw tightened, and Maya saw rage flash in his eyes before he schooled his features back to concern. "But he was wrong about one thing," Maya continued. "He thought I was weak. He thought he'd broken me completely. He didn't count on me being strong enough to run, to survive, to rebuild. And he didn't count on me finding people who saw my worth, even when I'd forgotten it myself." She stepped back from the podium, her legs trembling. Jennifer immediately stepped forward to give her statement. Then the other women, each one adding their voice to the chorus Richard had tried to silence. When it was over, when the last statement had been given, and Catherine had fielded the initial barrage of questions, Richard stood. The room went silent, everyone waiting to hear what the accused would say. "This is a tragic situation," Richard said, his voice dripping with practiced sympathy. "My wife has been very ill for a long time. These delusions, these paranoid fantasies, they're symptoms of her condition. I've been searching for her for 3 years, desperate to get her the help she needs. And now she's been manipulated by people who want to profit from her illness, who want to turn a medical situation into a media circus." He looked directly at Maya, and his expression was one of infinite patience, infinite sadness. "Rebecca, sweetheart, please, let me help you. Come home. Let's get you the treatment you need." The room was watching her, waiting to see if she would break, if the concerned husband's plea would crack her resolve. Maya walked back to the podium, looked into the cameras, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. My name is Maya, she said. Rebecca drowned 3 years ago. I'm what grew from her ashes, and I'm not coming home, Richard, because I am home, with people who love me without trying to control me, people who see my strength instead of my weakness, people who prove that kindness isn't a trap. She turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving Richard sitting there with his perfect mask finally beginning to crack, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Victory. The media firestorm started within minutes of Maya walking out of that conference room. By the time they reached Harrison's car, Maya's phone was exploding with notifications, news outlets, social media messages from people she didn't know, offering support, others calling her a liar. Catherine had warned her this would happen, but the reality of it was overwhelming. Don't read them, Harrison said gently, taking the phone from her hands. Not today. Today you just breathe. But breathing felt impossible. Maya's entire body was shaking with adrenaline and fear and something that might have been relief. She'd done it. She'd spoken, and the world was listening. Jennifer caught up with them in the parking lot, her face flushed. That was incredible. Did you see his face when you said you weren't coming home? He looked like he was going to explode. He's going to fight back, Maya said. This isn't over. Of course it's not over, but we landed the first blow. Jennifer hugged her tightly. Thank you for being brave enough to go first, for making the rest of us believe we could do it too. The drive home was silent. Maya stared out the window, watching the familiar streets blur past, and tried to process what she'd just done. She'd exposed Richard to the world. She'd told her story, her truth, to millions of people. There was no going back now, no more hiding, no more running. For better or worse, she'd planted her feet and declared war. Lily was waiting on the front porch when they pulled up, practically vibrating with excitement. You were on TV. I saw you, Miss Henderson next door called and said you were on the news, and I made Daddy's friend Tom turn it on, and you were so brave, Maya. You told everyone the truth. Maya knelt down and pulled Lily into a hug, feeling the girl's small arms wrap around her neck. Were you scared? Watching it. A little, but mostly I was proud. Lily pulled back her face, serious. That man, the one in the suit, he's the bad thing you were running from. Yes, he looks normal. The scariest ones usually do. Lily considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Good thing you're not alone this time, then. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal haze. Catherine called with updates every hour. The story had gone viral. Major news networks were picking it up. The medical board had already opened an investigation into Richard's practice. 3 more women had come forward with similar stories. The momentum was building. He's lawyered up, Catherine said on the 6 o'clock call. Big firm out of New York. They're already spinning the narrative that you're mentally ill, that these other women are opportunists, looking for a payday, that this is a witch hunt against a respected physician. Of course they are, Maya said tiredly. That's always been his playbook. But we have evidence. Real, documented evidence, and more importantly, we have 4 women willing to testify under oath. That's harder to dismiss as delusion. That night, Maya couldn't eat. She pushed food around her plate while Lily chattered about school, and Harrison watched her with concern. He was trying to hide. I'm fine, Maya said, catching his look. You're not, and that's okay. You don't have to be fine. If I'm not fine, then he wins. He gets to say I'm unstable, that I can't handle stress, that I need to be institutionalized for my own good. Stop. Harrison's voice was firm. You're allowed to be human, Maya. Being scared or tired or overwhelmed doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone who just went through hell and came out the other side. Maya's eyes stung. What if it wasn't enough? What if people still believe him? Then we keep fighting. But Maya, you need to see what's happening out there. The response isn't what you think. He pulled out his laptop and showed her. Twitter was exploding with support. Women sharing their own stories of abuse by authority figures. Therapists condemning Richard's behavior. Mental health advocates praising Maya's courage. Yes, there were doubters and trolls and people calling her a liar, but they were drowned out by the wave of belief. "You started something," Harrison said quietly. "You gave voice to something a lot of people have experienced but didn't know how to name." Maya read through the messages, the stories, the outpouring of support, and felt something crack open in her chest. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. She'd just been too isolated to know it. The next morning brought Richard's counterattack. His lawyers had worked through the night, and by dawn they'd released a statement to all major media outlets. Dr. Richard Brennan was devastated by his wife's continued mental health crisis. He had documentation spanning their entire marriage, showing her paranoid delusions, her unstable behavior, her multiple suicide attempts. He'd begged her to seek help, had arranged for the best psychiatric care, but she'd refused treatment. Her staged drowning had been another cry for help that he'd prayed would lead her to finally accept she needed intervention. The statement was accompanied by carefully selected excerpts from Richard's journals, entries describing Rebecca's erratic behavior, her accusations that he was controlling her, her refusal to take prescribed medication. On paper, it looked damning. It looked like exactly what Richard claimed, a sick woman in denial about her illness. Maya read the statement with shaking hands. He's so good at this, making lies sound like concern, making abuse sound like care. But we have the full journals now, Catherine said, over the phone, her voice crackling with barely contained excitement. Marcus got them last night. What? How? Let's just say Richard's office security isn't as good as he thought it was, and Marcus has friends in useful places. The full journals tell a very different story than those cherry-picked excerpts. They're a detailed record of psychological torture, Maya. He documented every manipulation technique. He used every method of control. He was proud of it, kept it like a trophy. Maya felt sick. He kept records of what he did to me, detailed records, which means we can prove in his own handwriting every single thing you've accused him of. His lawyers just handed us the murder weapon by acknowledging the journals exist. Things moved quickly after that. The medical board's investigation expanded. Police in 3 states opened inquiries into Richard's conduct with patients. His hospital privileges were suspended pending review. Former colleagues started coming forward with concerns they'd dismissed at the time, behavior they'd excused, because Richard was respected, successful, brilliant. But Richard didn't go quietly. He gave interviews, played the grieving husband, talked about the tragedy of mental illness and how it could make loved ones into enemies. He was sympathetic, articulate, convincing. The court of public opinion was split, some believing Maya's testimony, others swayed by Richard's performance of wounded nobility. He's always been good at performing, Maya told Harrison one night as they watched Richard's latest interview. That's what made it so hard to leave. Because the man on TV, that concerned, loving husband, that's who everyone else saw. Only I saw what he was like behind closed doors. Do you want to respond? Catherine says the producers from Good Morning America want you for an interview. Maya thought about it, about sitting across from a journalist, while millions watched, about facing more questions, more scrutiny, more opportunities for Richard to pick apart her words. No, she said finally. I said what I needed to say at the press conference. Now I let the evidence speak. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later. Catherine spent every day preparing, interviewing witnesses, organizing evidence, building a case so airtight that even Richard's expensive lawyers couldn't wiggle through the cracks. Maya tried to maintain normalcy for Lily's sake. She worked in the garden, made meals, helped with homework, but the weight of what was coming pressed down on her constantly. At night she dreamed of courtrooms and Richard's cold eyes and the sound of a gavel condemning her back to captivity. Harrison found her in the garden at 2 a.m, a week before the hearing, pulling weeds by flashlight. Can't sleep, he asked, though it was obvious. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, sitting in that courtroom looking at me like he owns me. Maya's hands were dirty, her nails broken. What if I freeze on the stand? What if he looks at me and I turn back into Rebecca, that scared woman who couldn't even trust her own memory? Harrison sat down in the dirt beside her. You're not her anymore. But what if I am? What if Maya was just a costume I wore to survive, and underneath I'm still the broken woman he made me? Then you remember something. Harrison took her muddy hands in his. Rebecca was someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone who loved gardens and trusted people and believed in love. Richard didn't break her. He buried her too. But you dug yourself out. You're not Rebecca, and you're not just Maya. You're both. The woman you were before the survivor you became and the person you're growing into. He doesn't get to define you anymore. Maya leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. When did you become so wise? When I met a woman who reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living and that it's never too late to choose life. The night before the hearing, Catherine came to the house with final preparations. Richard's lawyers are going to attack your credibility, she warned. They'll bring up every mistake you ever made, every time you cried or got angry, or did anything that could be construed as unstable. They're going to try to prove you're exactly what Richard says you are, a delusional woman having a psychotic break. So how do we fight that? By being honest, by admitting you were scared and traumatized, and yes, sometimes your behavior was erratic because you were being systematically abused. By letting the jury see you as human, not perfect. Perfection is suspicious. Humanity is believable. Maya nodded, trying to absorb it all. And Maya, he's going to be there in that courtroom. You're going to have to face him and speak while he's watching. Can you do that? Could she? Maya thought about the woman who'd stumbled into Harrison's headlights, broken and terrified. She thought about the woman who'd testified at the press conference with shaking hands and a voice that grew stronger with every word. She thought about Lily's contract in crayon and Harrison's steady presence and the roses that had bloomed again under her care. Yes, she said, I can do that. The courthouse was a circus. Media everywhere, protesters with signs both supporting and condemning Maya, curious onlookers, hoping for drama. Catherine had arranged for them to enter through a side door, but Maya could still hear the noise, feel the weight of all those eyes waiting to judge her. The courtroom itself was smaller than she expected, wood-paneled and formal. The judge, a woman named Patricia Morrison with gray hair and sharp eyes, commanded immediate respect. Richard sat at the defense table with his team of lawyers, looking every inch the distinguished professional in his navy suit. Maya took her seat at the prosecution table and forced herself to breathe. All rise. The hearing began. Catherine was brilliant, methodical, and ruthless in her presentation of evidence. She walked the court through Maya's testimony, corroborated by Richard's own journals. She presented Jennifer and the other victims, their stories forming a pattern impossible to dismiss as coincidence. She showed financial records of the payoffs to silent women, the irregularities in patient files, the documentation of abuse disguised as treatment notes. Richard's lawyers fought back hard. They brought in expert psychiatrists who testified about paranoid delusions and how trauma could create false memories. They presented Richard as a devoted husband and dedicated doctor who'd been driven to desperate measures by his wife's illness. They painted Maya as unstable, vindictive, a woman who'd rather destroy her husband's reputation than admit she needed help. And through it all, Richard sat perfectly still, his expression one of pained resignation, like he was a martyr suffering nobly through false accusations. Then Catherine called Maya to the stand. The walk from her seat to the witness box felt like miles. Maya's legs shook, her hands trembled as she placed them on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. And when she finally sat down and looked out at the courtroom, the first person she saw was Richard. He was staring at her with that look, the one that used to make her small, used to make her doubt everything she knew to be true. His eyes said she was making a mistake, that she would regret this, that he would win, because he always won. Maya looked away from him and found Harrison in the gallery. He nodded once, a small gesture of encouragement. Then she found Lily sitting next to him, her small face serious and determined. And Maya remembered who she was fighting for, Not just herself, but that little girl who'd decided Maya was family. The woman who'd welcomed her into their broken home and helped her heal. The life she'd built from ashes and borrowed time. "Mrs. Brennan," Catherine began gently, "can you tell the court about the first time your husband hurt you?" Maya took a breath, looked directly at the jury, instead of at Richard, and began to speak. She told them everything. Not the sanitized version, not the press conference summary, but the raw truth of what her marriage had been. The first time Richard had criticized her clothes, and she'd changed to please him, not realizing it was the first step in losing herself. The day he'd taken her phone and told her she was spending too much time on it, when really he wanted to cut her off from friends. The night he'd locked her in the bedroom and told her it was for her own good, that she was becoming hysterical and needed to calm down. She told them about the journals he'd kept, about watching him write in them after their fights, documenting her behavior like she was a specimen under glass. About the time she'd tried to read them, and he'd called it a violation of his privacy, a sign of her paranoid delusions. She told them about the escalation, how control became imprisonment, how concern became surveillance, how love became torture disguised as care. "He never hit me where anyone could see," Maya said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "But he didn't need to. He was a psychiatrist. He knew exactly how to break someone's mind, how to make them doubt their own reality, how to convince them they were crazy when really they were just being systematically destroyed." Richard's lawyer objected multiple times, trying to discredit her testimony, suggesting she was emotional and therefore unreliable. But Judge Morrison overruled each objection, her expression thoughtful as she listened. "Mrs. Brennan," the defense attorney said, when it was his turn to cross-examine, "isn't it true that you have no formal diagnosis of any mental illness?" "That's correct." "So when Dr. Brennan suggested you needed treatment, he was doing so based on his professional observation of your behavior. He was doing so to maintain control over me. Or perhaps he genuinely believed you needed help. Perhaps your refusal to seek treatment is what drove him to take more extreme measures to protect you." Maya looked directly at the lawyer. "If he wanted to protect me, he wouldn't have isolated me from everyone who loved me. He wouldn't have monitored my every movement. He wouldn't have kept journals documenting how successfully he was manipulating me." "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is characterizing." "I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said. "The witness may continue." Maya turned to face the jury. "My husband didn't want to protect me. He wanted to own me. And when I finally escaped, he spent 3 years hunting me, not because he was worried about my well-being, but because I was property that had gotten away." The courtroom was silent. Catherine rested her case 2 days later after parading witness after witness who corroborated Maya's story, who showed the pattern of Richard's abuse, who proved beyond doubt that this wasn't delusion or vindictiveness, but documented systematic psychological torture. Richard's lawyers tried to salvage their case, but the evidence was overwhelming. The journals were damning. The victims' testimonies were consistent. The financial record showed a pattern of paying for silence. Even Richard's colleagues, when pressed, admitted they'd had concerns they'd dismissed at the time. On the final day of testimony, Richard himself took the stand. He was composed, articulate, the picture of wounded dignity. He spoke about his love for his wife, his dedication to helping people, his devastation at being accused of the very thing he'd devoted his life to preventing. "I made mistakes," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I was so focused on helping Rebecca that I perhaps became too controlling, but everything I did out of love, out of genuine concern for her well-being." Catherine stood for cross-examination, and Maya saw the predator behind her professional demeanor. "Dr. Brennan, you kept detailed journals about your wife's behavior, correct?" "Yes, as part of my attempt to understand and help her condition." "Can you explain then why these journals contain entries like this one?" Catherine read from the evidence. Quote, "Today I convinced R that her memory of our argument was false. She apologized for something she didn't do. Progress." End quote. Does that sound like a doctor trying to help his patient, or someone documenting how successfully he's gaslighting his victim. Richard's composure cracked just slightly. That's taken out of context. Is it, how about this one? Quote, removed her access to bank accounts today. She believes it's because of her irresponsible spending. Reality is, I need complete financial control. End quote. What's the context that makes that acceptable? I was protecting our assets from her impulsive, or this one, quote, isolation is working. She has no one to contradict my version of events anymore. End quote. Catherine's voice was hard. Dr. Brennan, these journals are a how-to manual for psychological abuse. You documented your methods, your successes, your techniques for breaking another human being. And you expect this court to believe it was all done out of love. Richard's mask finally slipped. For just a moment, the jury saw the rage behind the concerned facade, the cold calculation behind the sympathetic eyes. My wife is mentally ill, he said, and his voice was ice. Everything in those journals was part of my attempt to create a controlled environment where she couldn't hurt herself. By hurting her yourself, by protecting her from her own delusions. Delusions like believing she deserved freedom, believing she deserved privacy, believing she deserved to be treated like a human being instead of a specimen in your personal laboratory. Objection. Richard's lawyer was on his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Morrison said, but her eyes were on Richard, and what she saw there was clearly not sympathetic. Catherine smiled, small and satisfied. No further questions, Your Honor. The closing arguments took most of the next day. Richard's lawyers argued mental illness and misunderstanding, painted him as a dedicated professional caught in an impossible situation. Catherine argued documented abuse, a pattern of predatory behavior, and a man who'd used his position and power to torture vulnerable women. Then the jury deliberated. Maya waited in a conference room with Harrison and Catherine, unable to sit still, unable to think about anything but the 12 people in that room deciding her fate. How long does it usually take? She asked. Anywhere from hours to days, Catherine said. Try not to read into the timing. Quick verdicts can go either way. But 3 hours later, they got the call. The jury had reached a decision. The walk back to the courtroom felt surreal. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Harrison held her hand, his grip steady and sure. The jury filed in their faces, unreadable. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. Maya couldn't breathe. This was it. Everything she'd fought for, everything she'd risked, coming down to the words about to be spoken. On the charges of psychological abuse, how do you find guilty? The word hit Maya like a physical blow. She heard it but couldn't quite process it. On the charges of false imprisonment, how do you find guilty? Harrison's hand tightened on hers. On the charges of patient abuse and professional misconduct, how do you find guilty? The courtroom exploded. Richard's lawyers were objecting, reporters were shouting questions, people in the gallery were crying or cheering or sitting in stunned silence. But Maya heard none of it. She was staring at Richard, watching his perfect facade finally crumble completely, watching him realize that for the first time in his life, he'd lost. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. Order, I will have order in this court. The room quieted. Dr. Brennan, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will take place in 2 weeks. Until then, you will be remanded into custody. She looked at him with something like disgust. You betrayed every oath you took as a physician. You used your position to hurt vulnerable people who trusted you, and you showed no remorse even when confronted with irrefutable evidence of your crimes. I look forward to ensuring you never have the opportunity to harm anyone again. 2 bailiffs moved forward to take Richard into custody. As they led him past Maya, he stopped, looked at her one final time. This isn't over, he said quietly so only she could hear. Maya met his eyes without flinching. Yes, it is. I'm free. And you're going to prison. It's over, Richard. And for the first time in 3 years, she believed it. Outside the courthouse, the media swarm was waiting. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust forward. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Catherine had warned Maya this would happen, but the reality of it was still overwhelming. Mrs. Brennan, how do you feel about the verdict? What message do you have for other abuse survivors? Do you think the sentence will be long enough? Catherine stepped forward, professional and composed. Mrs. Brennan will not be taking questions at this time. We're pleased with the jury's decision and look forward to the sentencing hearing. Thank you. But Maya surprised everyone, including herself, by stepping up to the microphones. I want to say something, she said, and her voice carried across the courthouse steps. The reporters' quieted cameras focused. 3 years ago, I was so broken that I thought the only way to survive was to die. I staged my own death because I couldn't see any other way out. But today, I'm standing here alive. Not just alive, surviving, actually living. She paused, gathering her thoughts, feeling Harrison's presence just behind her left shoulder. To anyone out there who's going through what I went through, who thinks they're trapped, who believes no one will believe them because their abuser is too powerful or too respected or too good at pretending to be something they're not. I want you to hear this. You're not crazy, you're not weak, and you're not alone. It might take everything you have to get out, but you can, and there are people waiting to catch you when you do. A reporter called out, "What's next for you?" Maya smiled, and it was real, genuine, the smile of someone who'd reclaimed her own life. I'm going home, to my family, to my garden, to the life I've built from nothing. That's what's next. She walked away from the cameras, then down the courthouse steps to where Lily was waiting with Harrison's assistant. The moment Lily saw her, she broke into a run, launching herself at Maya with the full force of her 8-year-old enthusiasm. You won, you beat the bad thing. Maya caught her holding tight, feeling this child's absolute faith in her like a physical warmth. We won, all of us together. The drive home was quiet. Maya stared out the window, watching the world go by, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the temporary quiet of hiding, but real, deep peace. The knowledge that she could walk down the street without looking over her shoulder, that she could use her real name, that she was finally truly free. That night, after Lily was in bed, Maya and Harrison sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the garden. I keep expecting to wake up, Maya said, to find out this was all a dream and I'm still running. It's not a dream. Harrison reached over and took her hand. It's real. You're safe. He's going to prison. This is your life now. My life. Maya tested the words. I don't think I've had a life that was really mine since I was 24 years old. Then it's time to figure out what you want it to be. Over the next 2 weeks, as they waited for Richard's sentencing, Maya began to reclaim pieces of herself she'd forgotten existed. She legally changed her name to Maya Brennan, keeping her married name as a reminder of what she'd survived, but claiming Maya as her true self. She got a driver's license with her real information for the first time in 3 years. She opened a bank account in her own name. Small things, but each one felt monumental. The sentencing hearing was shorter than the trial, less dramatic, but no less important. Judge Morrison had clearly spent time reviewing the evidence, the testimonies, the full scope of Richard's crimes. Dr. Brennan, she said, looking down at him from the bench, you had every advantage. Education, position, respect, trust. And you used all of it to hurt people. You took an oath to do no harm, and you violated that oath in the most fundamental way possible. You didn't just hurt your victims' bodies. You tried to destroy their minds, their sense of self, their ability to trust their own reality. Richard stood perfectly still, his expression blank. The court sentences you to 20 years in federal prison on the combined charges. Additionally, your medical license is permanently revoked. You will never practice medicine again. You will never have the opportunity to use your position to hurt another vulnerable person. 20 years. Maya did the math quickly. Richard was 52. He'd be 72. When he got out, if he lived that long, his career was over. His reputation was destroyed. Everything he'd built his identity on was gone. She waited to feel satisfaction, triumph, vindication. Instead, she just felt tired and ready to move on. The aftermath of the trial brought unexpected consequences. Maya's story had resonated with people across the country. Survivors reached out by the hundreds, sharing their own experiences with psychological abuse, thanking her for giving voice to something many didn't know how to name. Advocacy groups asked her to speak. Publishers wanted her to write a book. Therapists cited her case in their training on recognizing coercive control. "It's a lot," Maya admitted to Harrison one evening. They were in the garden, her favorite place where she felt most herself. "Everyone wants something from me. My story, my time, my energy. Sometimes I feel like I'm being consumed all over again, just in a different way." "Then say no," Harrison said simply. "You don't owe anyone your trauma. You told your story once in that courtroom. If you never want to talk about it again, that's your right." But Maya thought about all those messages, all those people who said her story had helped them leave, had given them courage, had made them feel less alone. "What if I could help them?" she said slowly. "Not by reliving my trauma over and over, but by showing them what comes after, by writing about healing instead of just about hurt." Harrison looked at her thoughtfully. "You want to write a book? Maybe. Not about the abuse, there's been enough said about that, but about what happens next, about learning to trust again, to build a life, to find family in unexpected places." She gestured at the garden around them, about how broken things can grow again if you give them the right conditions. "The Garden of Second Chances," Harrison said. Maya smiled. "That's a good title." She started writing the next day early in the morning before Lily woke up, when the house was quiet and the words could flow without interruption. It wasn't easy. Some days she could only manage a paragraph before the memories became too heavy. Other days the words poured out like they'd been waiting years to be spoken. She wrote about that night on the road, about Harrison's kindness and Lily's contract in crayon. She wrote about learning to sleep without barricading the door, about the first time she laughed without fear, about planting roses and watching them bloom. She wrote about Jennifer and the other women who'd stood beside her in court, about Catherine's fierce protection, about Marcus Webb's quiet competence. She wrote about healing being messy and non-linear, about good days and bad days, about learning to trust her own mind again. And she wrote about love. Not the twisted version Richard had offered, but real love. The kind that gave space instead of taking it, that built up instead of tearing down, that asked instead of demanded. 6 months after the trial, Maya finished the manuscript. It was raw and honest and imperfect, just like healing itself. She gave it to Harrison to read first, nervous about his reaction. He read it in one sitting, and when he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Maya, it's beautiful. It's going to help so many people." "You think so? I know so, because it's not just your story, it's everyone's story who's ever had to rebuild themselves from scratch. Everyone who's ever thought they were too broken to be loved. Everyone who's ever found family in unexpected places." He paused, setting the manuscript down carefully. "There's something I need to say." Maya's heart skipped. "Okay. I love you. I've been in love with you for months, probably since you first made Lily laugh. Definitely since you told me about burning those white roses. I know the timing might not be perfect, and I know you're still healing, but I need you to know. You're not just someone who lives in my house. You're not just someone I'm helping. You're the person I want to build a life with." Maya felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I love you too. I have for a while. I was just afraid to say it, afraid that admitting it would somehow jinx everything, make it all disappear." "It's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere." Harrison moved closer, taking her hands in his. "I want to do this right, Maya. Court you properly, give you time, let you choose me without any pressure or obligation. but I also want you to know my intentions. I want forever, with you, with Lily, building something real and healthy and good. I want that too, Maya whispered. So much. They kissed for the first time in the kitchen, where they'd cooked so many meals together, where they'd become family before they became lovers. It was gentle and sweet and tasted like hope. Lily found them there and made exaggerated gagging sounds. Are you two going to be gross all the time now? Probably, Harrison said, not letting go of Maya. Good, Lily said, grinning. It's about time. The book was published 8 months later. Maya chose to use her full name, Maya Brennan, refusing to hide anymore. The launch was terrifying and exhilarating. She did a handful of interviews carefully chosen and spoke at a few events for domestic violence survivors. But she also protected her peace, saying no to the requests that felt like they'd cost too much. The book found its audience, not through huge marketing campaigns or celebrity endorsements, but through word-of-mouth, survivor to survivor, each reader passing it along to someone who needed it. It became required reading in some therapy practices, recommended in support groups, gifted between friends who understood. Maya started getting letters, not just messages thanking her for her courage, but stories of hope. A woman who'd left her abusive marriage after reading the book, a man who'd recognized his own psychological abuse from a parent and sought therapy, a teenager who'd realized her boyfriend's control wasn't love and walked away. You're making a difference, Catherine said when she came to visit on the book's first anniversary. Not just with your case, but with every person who reads this and recognizes themselves. It's strange, Maya said. I spent 3 years trying to be invisible, and now I'm very visible. But it doesn't feel exposing anymore. It feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 2 years after the trial, Harrison proposed in the garden surrounded by the roses Maya had brought back to life. It was evening, the golden hour when everything glowed warm and soft. Lily was there trying to be casual but practically vibrating with excitement because she'd known about the proposal for weeks. Maya, Harrison said, getting down on one knee in the dirt, not caring about his expensive pants. You came into my life when both of us were broken. You showed me that healing isn't about forgetting what we've lost, but about making room for new love. You brought life back to this garden, to this house, to me and Lily. You're brave and strong and kind, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that love doesn't have to hurt. He pulled out a ring, simple and elegant. Will you marry me? Maya looked at this man who'd stopped his car in a storm and offered safety when she'd forgotten what that word meant. She looked at Lily, bouncing on her toes, hope written all over her face. She looked at the garden around them, at everything they'd built together. Yes, she said, and the word felt like freedom. Yes, absolutely yes. Lily shrieked and launched herself at them both, and they ended up in a heap in the garden, laughing and crying and completely, perfectly happy. They were married 6 months later in the backyard under an arch covered in roses. White roses because Maya had reclaimed them, had decided that Richard didn't get to take beautiful things from her anymore. But these white roses were mixed with pink and yellow and red, a riot of color that reflected the life she'd built. Jennifer was there along with the other women from the trial sisters, in survival and healing. Catherine came with her wife and twin daughters. Marcus Webb wore a suit and actually smiled. Lily was maid of honor and took the job incredibly seriously, making sure every detail was perfect. The ceremony was small and intimate, just the people who mattered. Maya wore a simple dress, cream-colored and flowing, and she walked herself down the aisle because she didn't need anyone to give her away. She was giving herself freely, chosen to a love that nurtured instead of controlled. When the officiant asked if she took Harrison to be her husband, Maya looked at him and saw her future. Not a fairy tale where the prince saved the princess, but something better. A partnership between two people who'd survived loss and learned that love could heal without erasing scars. I do, she said, and meant it with every part of herself. At the reception, as the sun set and lights twinkled in the trees, Lily gave a toast that had everyone reaching for tissues. "When Maya first came to our house, I thought she was just someone who needed help," Lily said, reading carefully from note cards. "But really, we all needed help. Daddy was sad all the time, and I was scared he'd never be happy again. Then Maya fixed the garden and made Daddy smile and taught me that families don't have to be perfect to be real. She showed us that broken things can grow again if you're patient and kind and you talk to them nicely." She looked at Maya, her eyes shining. "You're the best mom I could have asked for, not the one I was born to, but the one I chose. And you chose us back. That's what matters." Maya was crying too hard to respond, so she just pulled Lily into a hug and held on tight. Later, as they danced under the stars, Harrison whispered in Maya's ear, "Happy. So happy I'm almost afraid of it," Maya admitted, "like it might be too much, like something will happen to take it away." "Nothing's going to take this away. We fought too hard for it." Harrison pulled back to look at her. "And Maya, you deserve this, all of it. The happiness, the peace, the love. You deserve it not because of what you survived, but because of who you are." 3 years after the wedding, Maya stood in a bookstore watching a young woman buy a copy of The Garden of Second Chances. The woman's hands trembled as she paid, and Maya recognized that tremble. The shake of someone still scared, still running, still not sure if safety was possible. Maya almost walked away. She'd learned to protect her peace, to not take on every survivor's pain as her own. But something made her speak. "That's a good book," she said casually. The woman looked up startled, then recognition dawned. You're Maya Brennan." "I am." "This book." The woman clutched it to her chest. "It's the first thing that made me think I could actually leave, that there was life after." "There is," Maya said gently. "It's hard and it's scary, and some days you'll want to give up. But it's possible. You can build something beautiful from the ashes." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so afraid." "I know, I was too. But being afraid and doing it anyway, that's courage. And you're already here buying this book, taking the first step. You're braver than you think." They talked for a few more minutes, Maya giving the kind of encouragement she wished someone had given her. When they parted, the woman looked lighter, like permission had been granted to save herself. Maya left the bookstore and drove home to the house that had been her sanctuary and became her home. The garden was in full bloom, a testament to patient care and steady love. Lily, now 14 and somehow both child and young woman, was doing homework on the porch. Harrison was in the kitchen cooking dinner and singing off-key to the radio. This was her life. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and chosen and hers. That evening after dinner, they sat together in the garden as fireflies began their nightly dance. Lily was telling a story about drama at school, complete with dramatic reenactments. Harrison was listening with the attention of a father who knew these years were precious and fleeting. And Maya sat between them, her hands in the soil she'd learned to love, surrounded by the roses she'd brought back to life. "Mom," Lily said, and Maya still felt a rush of warmth every time Lily called her that. "Do you ever think about the night you met Dad, about how different everything could have been?" Maya thought about it, about the woman she'd been that night, broken and terrified and ready to die rather than continue living in fear. She thought about Harrison's headlights, about Lily's voice calling out that she was scared, about the choice to trust when trust had been used as a weapon against her. "I think about it," Maya said. "I think about how many things had to go wrong for me to end up in that road, and how many things had to go right for your dad to be the one who found me. I think about how close I came to giving up completely." She looked at her family, at the life they'd built together. "But mostly I think about how grateful I am that I didn't, that I stumbled into those headlights instead of into the river, that I said yes to staying even though I was terrified, that I chose to fight instead of run." "Do you still have bad days?" Lily asked with the directness of a teenager who wasn't afraid of hard truths. "Sometimes," Maya admitted. There are still moments when I flinch at loud noises, or when I double-check that doors are locked, or when I wake up from nightmares about being trapped. But they're getting further apart. And when they happen, I have you two to remind me that I'm safe, that I'm loved, that I'm free." Harrison reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "I used to think survival was enough," Maya continued, "that if I could just stay alive, stay hidden, stay one step ahead, that would be victory. But survival isn't living. Living is this. It's gardens and family dinners and bad days that don't destroy you because you're not facing them alone. It's choosing love even when love once meant pain. It's trusting again even though trust was betrayed." She looked at the roses blooming around them, at the life that had grown from such desperate beginnings. "Everything grows better when you talk kindly to it. Your mom used to say that, Lily, and she was right. Plants, people, broken hearts, they all need the same things. Patience, kindness, the belief that they're worth the effort to nurture. And sunshine," Lily added with a grin. "Don't forget sunshine." "And sunshine," Maya agreed, laughing. As darkness fell and the stars emerged, they stayed in the garden this family built from loss and love and the courage to try again. Maya looked up at the sky and thought about all the women reading her book right now, all the people planning their escape, all the survivors learning to trust their own reality again. She thought about Richard locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone else, his power finally broken. She thought about the woman she'd been the one who'd begged not to be hurt when she was already dying inside. And she thought about Maya, who'd risen from Rebecca's ashes and learned that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to stay broken. "I love you both," she said quietly, "more than I ever thought I could love anything." "We love you too, Mom," Lily said, leaning against her shoulder. "Always," Harrison added, wrapping his arm around them both. And there, in the garden of second chances, surrounded by roses that refused to die and a family that refused to give up, Maya finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not rescue, not revenge, not even justice, though that had been important too. Just this, the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, the peace that came from knowing she'd faced her worst fear and survived. The joy of ordinary moments with extraordinary people. She'd been afraid kindness was a lie, that safety was impossible, that love always came with conditions and costs. But she'd been wrong, and being wrong had saved her life.